Good morning, Rosie. Yes, that's right. Jack Merritt, who was 25, and Saskia Jones, who was 23, were both graduates from Cambridge University. They were attending and convening a conference here at the Fishmongers Hall by London Bridge, which was about prisoner rehabilitation when Usman Khan went on his rampage. It began there in that hall where they both were stabbed. He then stabbed two other women and another man who are in hospital at the moment before he spilled out onto the street. And you can see the police tents and forensic vehicles here, this side of the bridge, still taped off before he reached this section of the bridge and then was shot by the police. Now, we have had some details over the weekend about these two. They were both strong believers and campaigners for changing of the way that our prison system works. Jack Merritt's father has been speaking out quite publicly, criticising the politicisation of his son's death and specifically headlines in the newspapers calling for tougher sentences and reform, saying that's not what his son would have wanted. And we have heard as well from the family of Saskia, who says she was a funny, kind and positive influence at the centre of many people's lives. And later on this morning, there will be a service about a mile from here, a vigil to remember those victims of this attack and also to pay tribute to the work of the emergency services and those people here in London who took on the attacker.
At this time of year, with just, the election taking place next week, it was inevitable that there was going to be some political influence in this. There's been a real sharp focus now, hasn't there, on the country's anti-terror laws?
Yeah, there has been. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was on the BBC yesterday morning on the Andrew Marr programme. He revealed that there were 74 other former convicted prisoners who had been found to have who had been found guilty of plotting terrorist attacks, who are out on release on licence like this. There's now a review into the conditions of that, and there is a lot of debate as to whether or not it is right that they are being released halfway through their sentences, like Mr. Khan was. And the Prime Minister was basically trying to put the blame at the last Labour government, saying that these laws were changed in about 2008, and that is the reason why. Many people saying, well, that's not really acceptable. They've been in power since 2010. They could have changed this. Labour have been putting up people to rebut this, saying it's not the fault of that Labour government. It's what's been happening in prisons, the lack of the numbers of staffing needed to try and monitor people in prisons like Khan, the lack of de-radicalisation programmes as well. And it's whether or not that needs to be looked at. But the election campaign this morning still slightly suspended. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, we expect to be attending the vigil later on this morning. But I think in the next couple of days, as the campaign starts to get back up into gear again, I think there will be talk about these prison sentences, whether they need to be tougher and whether there needs to be a greater investment in our prisons.